Hey guys, it's Alexis, aka the Soft Reader, and I'm here today to do my December wrap-up. I ended up completing 5 books in December, and then I started another one and actually ended up DNFing it. Overall, December was a good month, but I didn't get to read much. I had exams in the first 2 weeks of December, and then I had graduation, and then I immediately went into working like 30 hours a week in prep because I work in retail, which means Christmas was super busy for us, and I basically was working till like 11 o'clock every night, and yes, so I didn't get to read terribly much, but I actually ended up reading a lot more than I thought I would, so I'm pretty pleased with that. Of course, I completed my Around the Year in 52 Books challenge in December, so that was pretty exciting, and I will leave that link either down below or in the icon cards if you guys want to go see the wrap-up I did for that. I'll go ahead and just get into the books I read. The first book I completed in the month of December was The House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros. This tells the story of a girl named Esperanza living on Mango Street in Chicago, and she is from a Latino family, and so it's basically just a series of vignettes all about her life growing up on this street and about the different people who lived on this street and the lessons she learned living on this street and about her family, and it was really good, but I just don't I ended up giving this 3 stars. It was really good, and I like the vignette style because it means that I read very fast, but overall I just feel like I didn't really connect at all to this story. Obviously I am not a Latina. I have no ties to, the Latinx community, and even as a woman, I just didn't feel like I could connect to the story at all, which is kind of upsetting because Sandra Cisneros actually wrote these based on a lot of her feelings when she was growing up. And overall, I think if I had studied it in school and I had really dove into like the literary elements of it, I probably would have enjoyed it a lot more, but considering I just sat down to read it one day, I just really couldn't connect to it, which was a shame. The next book I completed in the month of December was one that I have technically been reading since like March, but I kind of stopped reading it for a couple of months there to finish other stuff, and that was Mistborn: The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. For me, I ended up giving this book 4 stars, but I will be honest, it was almost a 3-star read for me, except for the last 150-200 pages really changed it for me. But overall, I found the middle part of this book really slow, which was kind of why I had made it halfway through the book, and then I just stopped reading because I never wanted to pick it up. I just was kind of bored. And I will say I really liked the ending. So I will say that the last 200 pages were really good. I really liked everything that happened in the last 200 pages. I really liked the twist at the end of this book. I didn't see it coming. It was not what I personally thought was going to happen, so I appreciate that I genuinely was surprised. The biggest issue I genuinely had with this book was with Vin, who is the main character. I just really didn't care for Vin's character. And by that, I just meant that I felt like Vin was not as strongly developed as Kelsier, who is the main male character. And that's just kind of disappointing to me because I was going into this and I was expecting Vin to be this badass whatever, and to me she just wasn't in this book. She gets more so at the end of the book, but not for the huge chunk, for the first 500 pages, and I just didn't appreciate that basically once Vin meets this other boy her age, she basically throws all of her previous reservations and feelings out the window because she suddenly meets Eland, and then she's Eland's a good guy, whereas 200 pages before she basically was I don't trust anybody and everyone is out to betray you, but then she meets Eland and she's there are good people in the world, and it's she talked to the dude once at this point. So I just felt her whole character suddenly became about Eland, and that really bugged me because I was why does her character have to be so much about Eland's character? And that really bugged me, and I will admit, towards the end of the book, he shows that it's kind of the same with Eland too, where that everything about him is kind of about Vin, but the fact that for 200 pages, everything out of Vin's mouth was about Eland drove me crazy, and that really put a bad taste in my mouth and really soured the book for me on a lot of notes. but I can appreciate how absolutely amazing this world is, how amazing the magic system is. Allomancy is so cool. And I'm really intrigued by the next two books because this one wrapped up really nicely, so I literally have no idea what the next two books are even going to be about. So it'll be interesting to check it out in the upcoming year. The next book I finished in the month of December ended up being one of my favorite books for the entire year, and that was Vicious by V.E. Schwab. No surprise, I'm in love with V.E. Schwab's writing, so really, this one should have been a giveaway that I was going to love it. But this basically tells the story of two men, Eli Ever and Victor Vale, and it's basically goes back and forth between the present and then 10 years ago, and it's basically about Eli and Victor create an experiment to basically to make themselves into EOs, extraordinaries, which are just people with supernatural abilities. And it's about that, and then in the future, it's about, that something has happened between the two of them, and now they are mortal enemies. And it's about Victor trying to get revenge against Eli for putting him in prison. That's like in the first chapter, I promise, it's not a spoiler. And so it's basically about the two of them like trying to get revenge on each other, and it's just so good. I gave it 5 stars, but even after I finished it, I couldn't stop thinking about it. And that is why it's one of my all-time favorite books, because at first I was just like, oh, okay, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. I couldn't stop thinking about how clever some of the details in this book were, and how amazing Victor's character is, especially, when you look at his relationship with Eli versus his relationship with Sydney, and how his relationship with Eli changed over time. And there's just so many subtle parts of this book that are just so amazing. Little nuances to both Eli and Victor's characters that just show how utterly complex they are. Both of them start out this book with very different motivations and intentions, and then by the end of the book, when you kind of see, what each of them are trying to accomplish, and it's such an amazing growth between like the part in the present and then the part in the past. I loved reading about that. Victor Vale is one of my all-time new favorite characters. He's just so well written and fantastic, and I love his relationship with Sydney, which is this small girl in the novel he like picks up, and just how much he tries to protect her, and how much he's trying to just teach her about the world. And I just loved this book so much. Obviously, V.E. Schwab is an amazing writer in my eyes, and I can just see why this is one of her most popular books. The next book I completed in the month of December was the one book I told myself I was going to read in December, and I did it. And it is actually an anthology, and is the My True Love Gave to Me anthology, edited by Stephanie Perkins. On average, I did give this one about 3 stars, and that was basically just like adding up the individual ratings for all of the stories and then averaging them out. Of course, My True Love Gave to Me is a collection of short stories that are all focused on the holiday season, and it was a lot of fun. I definitely enjoyed some of the stories more than others. I'm not going to give you an individual rating on each one, but I will leave my Goodreads review down below where I give the rating, and I also give a brief little review on each one, saying why I liked it, why I didn't like it. But I will say that my favorite stories of the bunch were the one by Stephanie Perkins, the one by Kirsten White, and the one by Rainbow Rowell. Those are my 3 favorites. If I had to choose my 3 least favorites, it would be the one by Gail Forman, the one by Kelly Link, and probably the one by Mira McIntyre. Those are my least favorites. But overall, I still really, really enjoyed this, and I am so excited to go and pick up the Summer Days and Summer Nights anthology and read that one, especially because I know that Stephanie Perkins' couple from this book is actually the couple in the next book, and that was my favorite story in the duology, so I'm so excited to read more about that couple. The next book I tried to read in the month of December was the one I ended up DNFing, and it was a book I actually was sent for review. I received a review on NetGalley, which I hate DNFing books that I get for review because I just feel like I shouldn't. I feel like I'm like falling down on the job. but I couldn't. I got to the like 50% mark in this book and I just couldn't anymore. I was getting to the point where I was nitpicking everything and I was just hunting for stuff to dislike because I just wasn't enjoying it, and that was The Blazing Star by Imani Josie, which breaks my heart because I was so excited for this book, and when I got an arc of it, I was so excited, and I did not enjoy it at all. Obviously, I'm not going to give a rating because I didn't complete the book, and if I don't complete a book, I don't give it a rating. But just to give you some thoughts, I just don't feel like anything was happening in the book. I feel like I was 50% of the way through and nothing had happened. Like, there was really no action. It was a lot of just talking about stuff, and it was just very boring to me. My other big complaint with it is that I don't really feel like I was reading a story about ancient Egypt. Instead, I feel like if you had changed any of the names in the story, it could have taken place in any ancient society, which was a real bummer to me because I was really looking forward to reading a book about ancient Egypt, and I don't feel like I got that. My other complaint is that I don't really feel like the author did a very good job of explaining stuff. And I did write up a Goodreads review, and I'll leave that down below as well in case you want to read that. But I just don't feel like the author did a very good job explaining stuff. She would use one word for skirt the entire story, and then all of a sudden she would switch to using the word Shindite, or I don't really know how to say it, which was like the Egyptian word for like the skirts that the men wore. But she wouldn't explain that Shindite is what the skirt was. She would just, a man would walk in and she would explain it, and she would be like, the Shindite was white, and you were like, what is a Shindite? And that's not the only example. There were a bunch of other examples in the book, and it just really was not well explained. The couple of times that Egyptian gods and goddesses were mentioned, it was never explained what they were the gods and goddesses of, or the mythology about them at all, and that was a real disappointment to me. And yeah, overall, once I got to the 50% mark, I just couldn't do it anymore because I was just really starting to nitpick, and once I get to that point, I know I just have to put the book down. The final book I completed in the month of December, I literally finished at like December 31st at like 10:30. So it nearly missed making my final book of 2016, but it did, and it was a good one. It was a good end of the year, and that was Gemena by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. Of course, this is the sequel to Illuminae, which was probably my favorite book of 2015. I loved Illuminae, and so it is with regret that I have to say I did not enjoy Gemena as much as I enjoyed Illuminae. I do have a full spoiler-free review coming out later on in the week, so I won't say too much about this book, but I will say that I did give it 4 stars, which is still a good book. I had given Illuminae 5 stars, and I was expecting to give this one 5 stars, so it is a bit of a disappointment. Alright guys, so those were all of the books I read in December. Those were the last reads I had for the year of 2016, which was pretty exciting. Again, I read pretty decent books in the month, especially because I read one of my all-time new favorite books in the month of December, so that was pretty exciting. But you guys should let me know down below what your favorite book you read in December was, or maybe even if you want to tell me some of your favorite books for the year, if you maybe didn't comment on the other video I did where I talked about my favorite books of the year. But I will see you guys soon with another video.